share my screen. Uh, can you see my screen here?
Yeah, I can.
When was this picture taken?
That was that's got to be when I am 10.
10 years old. All right, I'm gonna note that.
Yeah. So
Um,
that's like 10 or probably 10. That's probably 10.
Fantastic. So
Oh man.
this is kind of just like
I
the
love that.
behind the scenes of what I'm writing so far.
Sure.
So just talking about your memorable MLS and US men's national team career, of course, and now you got over 400,000 on all socials. Did the math there, you're at like 465 across
That's pretty
all your
good, I guess.
platforms.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were born February 12th, 1977. I know your mom's name is
Pam. Pam.
Oh, it's Pam. It's listed as Kim online.
Kim is my dad.
Oh, your
So
dad. Oh,
my dad's Danish, and so Kim is a very popular male name in Denmark.
Oh.
But I'm gonna tell him you said that because he hates his name.
Okay, so it's listed on your on a data thing as your mom being Kim.
Yeah, which is
That's
pretty
funny.
awesome. Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so I have that info. When did you start playing soccer?
When I was 5.
5. And did you play only in AYSO or did you play like club?
So I initially kicked the ball around with my grandfather, who was Danish, born in Denmark, and he's the one that kind of planted the seed, I'd say, in terms of what's cool about the game. Like, you could tell he was super passionate about it. And as a kid, you gravitate towards that, even when you're not. I guess when you're an adult as well, you kind of gravitate to wondering why somebody would care about something so much. And he had that, right? He's just, we know those crazy fans in our life. And I think he also had ideas of being a pro one day, and maybe didn't get to live out the dream that he wanted, but he passed away when I was 11. So not too long after that photo. And
I'm sorry about that.
It's part of it. It's part of the journey. And so he never got to see me do anything. I do know there's some funny stories though, because when I was like 7 or 8, I just dominated. And I averaged like 3 goals a game, just crushing it. And the next year I got pushed up where I was playing against a little bit older kids and I wasn't as dominant. And he told my dad that I had lost it, that I was never going to be good enough to play because, after like 6 months of.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
It's funny, but that's awesome.
Yeah. So he was very serious, and he would come to my games and be very serious about how I was performing. So I knew it mattered to him, and obviously I think he would have been pretty proud of what I had accomplished. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, they see your resume and they're like, how does this guy win all these awards? And now he's on YouTube and Twitch and TikTok.
Yeah.
It's like, oh Lord. But
yeah, it's like basically I'm wearing a different hat. I mean, I think the biggest thing in the way that I can, because I knew at some point if I want to coach and be taken quote unquote serious, I have to, or the expectation is that I need to be serious with everything in my life. And what I would say if I ever got into a proper interview is I just take what I do very seriously, but I give you full commitment, right? So if I'm going to commit to being a YouTuber, well, I'm going to try to be awesome at it. If I'm going to commit to making content anywhere else, I want to be awesome at it. And that is really the main driver behind being on these other things. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to commit. And that was really, as I look back at my playing career, that was my main talent, Caleb, was commitment. Like I didn't have, I wasn't going to be the one that dropped a dime into space, or I wasn't going to dribble past 3 people or take a great free kick or whatever, but I was going to give you every single ounce of my being to try to make sure we won the game. And that was my talent.
That's fantastic. So along with that, so playing, you started at 5. With your grandfather, did you play? This is an age question here. Did you play club soccer during that time, or was it just high school?
No. I played AYSO from age probably 6 to age 11, and then I ran into made the all-star teams in AYSO. Shout out to Region 98.
I'll make sure to include that.
Yeah, Region 98, dude, for life. And Live Oak Park is where we had all of our games. Shout out to Live Oak Park. And we had a very good all-star team. Like we were crushing it. We won the area like tournament or whatever. Then we won the sectionals, and that was as far as you could go at that particular point. And so the guy that was coaching us, his son played at Cal State Northridge, and his son would essentially coach us during the week.
Mhm.
And then if he could get there or not, whenever he could get there, he was coaching us. And he got to the point where he's like, we probably should just try to be a club. You know, I mean, that we should try to take this a little bit more serious. There's clearly enough talent here to be competitive.
Of course.
And there wasn't that many teams. So at age 11, he's like, we're going to do this. And you have to basically quit all your other commitments. And my parents and a lot of the parents are like, what are you talking about? You know, we want our kid to play baseball and whatever else. And it was an easy choice for me because baseball is boring as shit. So I was done with baseball. I said, yeah, I want to play soccer. And I wanted to be around a coach like this. His name's Ron, that I knew you could just gravitate. He's another one, like my grandfather, just was super passionate about the game, loved the game. And you start to be around these people and they start to plant the seeds of enthusiasm. And then they start to teach you the game.
Yep.
And once they start to teach you the game and the game becomes, not say easy, but game becomes easier, then you start to enjoy the game in a different way. And I got that bug very early on. And then, you know, you have your growing pains. So ultimately I went from like AYSO from like 6 to 11, 6 to 10, and then club from 11 to I won the under 20 national championship with the San Diego Surf back in the day. And that was like my last club tournament ever. So that was like 11 to 19. I was playing club.
Fantastic.
But then, yeah, I played high school as well. And I to talk about high school very quickly, a lot of people shit on high school and the experience now, right? Oh, we have these academies and I don't want my kid to play in high school because, you know, the level's not high enough and they could get hurt and
the roster rules and stuff for MLS
I think
academies.
it's crap, dude, because I think what happens is if you're an academy player, you're probably on a team where everybody's not say equal, but everybody's pretty close in level, right? When you go to high school, you have to raise the game of players that can't play very well.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? You have to learn these skills. And it's not just ability on the ball. It's also how do you talk to somebody that isn't as good as you? Do you talk down to them if they don't do something right? Do you build them up? Right? You have to learn these interpersonal skills, and not only like off the field, because you don't want them to feel less than off the field. If you want to be a proper leader, but you have to make them feel like they're contributing on the field, right? So there's all these different types of communication that you probably don't get if you're playing with players that are all pretty good at your academy. And these skills aren't just skills for the sport, it's skills for life, right? Because you're going to run into people of all different levels at all different phases of their life. And if you're working with them, how do you get the most out of them? And I think that is very valuable. And I also would say playing for your school hits different than it does when you're just playing for like an academy team that most people don't pay attention to, don't care.
Of course.
But high school, they do care. And if you don't perform well, oh, you lost to your big rival. How could you let that happen? Like there's a little bit of that pressure that comes from representing your school that you can't replicate in an academy. So I know that that's going to continue to evolve and change as the academy becomes more robust and they're playing more games more regularly. But I do think that there is a place for high school where these players can grow not only as players, but as leaders and as human beings.
Yeah. So building on that, so where I'm from, in Massachusetts, we had this one kid on my high school team. Like I was one of the captains. Me and this other kid were captains. We had this one kid who started playing as a freshman. Okay. This kid was, when he started, was terrible. He's terrible. He's the worst player on the field. But over time, he learned from players that have been playing club. He was the only player out of our high school that in the 4 years that went D1.
No way.
Went Division I, 4 years. And I think he went to, he didn't go to Virginia UVA. He went to VCU.
Okay. Virginia Commonwealth. Yeah.
Still,
yeah. D1, Z1. Yeah.
D1, Z1. Like my sister's going D1. She's going to Virginia Commonwealth.
Sweet.
So it's like, I get the point because she did both club and also high school, but
yeah,
she won a championship for Hanover, for my high school last year.
Which again, that's another way of like, okay, you know, how do you become a winner? You know, it's like, it's just different. Playing for your school is just different. So I'm glad. Congratulations to her.
Thank you. I'll let her know. So along that, so you did all 4 years at Temple City, correct?
That's right. Home of the Rams. Let's go Rams.
I'm a Ram.
You know,
myself.
I will say I never won the league. It's like the only league I have never won in my career. I won everything I could at club level. I won, you know, state cup and won the national championship at the club level, won national championship in college. won Open Cup and
Mm-hmm.
MLS Cup and Gold Cup. Like from a domestic point of view, I've won a lot of trophies.
Except for high school.
I couldn't win in high school, man. And it's because we had another high school in there, La Cañada, who when my senior year, we beat them at La Cañada for that was the first time in our history. We beat them 1-0.
Uh-huh.
And after they lost that game, they went on like a 50-something game unbeaten streak and were the #1 high school in the country. So they were just stacked.
Your fault.
Well, yeah, probably. But they were the ones that always won the league. And because they won the league, they got the league MVP. And I could never break into, I could get first team all league, but I could never get league MVP. Couldn't win the league. So frustrating. But it's part of the story. It's kind of funny.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Yeah.
So following your 4-year high school career, you ended up applying to UCLA. You got denied. I know that for a fact.
Yep.
I know you've posted about that before as well. And you attended San Diego State for 2 years.
I went to San Diego State for 2 years. That's right. And I transferred out.
Were you recruited to play at San Diego State, or did you walk on at San Diego State as well?
No, so I wasn't recruited. Ultimately, that coach, Ron, that I'd mentioned before,
mm-hmm.
he was still my coach. I'd had different coaches along the way, but I ended up playing a year up. I skipped a grade when I was younger, so I had to play with a year up because that was my graduating class. So we made the decision around 15 or 16 that I should start playing a year up. So I joined his team at that point. He had left the club that I had been at since I was the Santa Anita club that I was at from 11 to like 16. And then I joined, he left, and I joined the Chino Spirit for like my last couple of years before I had that like one-off tournament with the surf that we won. But when I joined him, the famous story from his perspective is that he called coaches on my behalf. He just couldn't believe that I was falling through the cracks. And he ended up getting on the phone with Ziggy Schmid, the coach of UCLA, rest in peace. Yeah. And Ziggy was like, all right, tell me about this kid, whatever. And my coach, Ron, said that I would be twice the player that Mike Lapper ever was. And at that point, Mike Lapper was an All-American. He just like Ziggy loved Mike Lapper. Mike Lapper played in MLS, right, for the Columbus Crew for a long time, but didn't play. He might have had a glass or a cup of coffee with an MLS national team, but he didn't play in a World Cup or anything. And so ultimately, the funny part of the whole story is that I probably became twice the player that Mike Lapper ever became. But Ziggy just wasn't buying it at that time. So Ron called all these D1 schools on my behalf, and he got a hold of Chuck Clegg, who was the San Diego State coach, and was so, persuasive in how he was talking about how I was going to help, that this coach gave me a scholarship sight unseen. Never seen me play, just based on the recommendation of my who he had never met. So and it wasn't a big scholarship. It was, I think they gave me housing and books. So it wasn't a full scholarship. They didn't pay for my tuition, didn't pay for a couple, and food or any of that stuff. But my housing was taken care of and my books. So it's kind of like a half scholarship.
Fantastic.
I'll take it, right?
Yeah.
And it was D1, and I didn't get that like solidified till about 6 weeks before the season or before I had to be there for preseason. So it was like a really long process. I was floating for a long time. It ended up working out, and I just made sure I was super fit, man. And because I knew that it's really rare for a coach to cut the fittest guy on the team, because at the very least the fittest guy on the team gives a shit and he cares. And so I always took that to heart and always made sure I was the fittest guy on every team I played on, including the national team when I got there. So that was something I wore as like a badge of honor. And I crushed it. We had to run 3 miles under 19 minutes. And that was one of the tests. Dude, I got the 17:06 or something. I was flying.
3 miles in 17:06.
Yeah, I was flying.
Damn.
Yeah, so I beat everybody by over half a lap. I was crushing. I just wanted to make an impression right away, because I knew that he hadn't seen me before, and I knew that first impression I wanted to be very good. So I came out flying, and I played pretty well. He was a coach, like, he put me at holding midfield, which I was actually pretty good at and feeling comfortable with, and felt good with the first team. And then the first game of the season, he's like, we're going to put you up top because I don't trust freshmen to play in important parts of the field. We got to, if you make a mistake, we can make up for it. And I was like, that's your rationale for like why it was so weird. And so after 2 years of that kind of logic, I had to get out. And so I ultimately started to call around, did the whole thing again, and ultimately convinced UCLA to give me a shot, but only because Danny Califf didn't come into. He was supposed to get recruited by UCLA, and he turned it down to go to Maryland, and that gave me the opportunity to come in.
Yeah.
And then I walked on. Nothing was paid for at that point.
Yeah, I mean, going through that, to my knowledge, you are one of 3 to walk on at UCLA ever.
There's got to be more than that. No?
Kobe Jones and Benny Feilhaber and you. That's it.
Steve Shack is another one. I'll give you 4. Steve Shack walked on my senior year, and he was a freshman. Ended up starting for us. Okay. It was Matt Reese in goal, me. Steve Shack ended up being the #1 draft pick for the Metro Stars when he came out. Probably was the worst thing that could have happened to him because the expectations were way too high. And then Carlos Bocanegra played with us as well, and we were stacked, dude. We had a good team.
Yeah, it sounds not so fun for everyone else to have. Does not sound like a fun.
No, we were good. Yeah, it was fun.
Like if I showed up on a team against you guys, I would have been very.
It was going to be a long day for you.
Yeah, it was going to be a long day. It was a long day.
Yeah.
So following your collegiate career, you ended up not being drafted, and was looking to make it in the league. I know you went on trial with the LA Galaxy, and
that's right.
It ended up being unsuccessful, and under recommendation through one of the coaches, you ended up at the Flash. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, to give you some insight on that, that's like the top line way to do it. Connect the dots. Octavio Zambrano was the coach of the Galaxy at the time, and I had played. So again, I had a really good first impression when I went in for that trial, and they were going to take me to Florida for their proper preseason camp. And I was stoked. I mean, I had the travel bag. I had the bag with all the gear in it. I was going to be like number 28, the polo, the travel stuff, and everybody in the locker room was stoked for me. Robin Frazier, Greg Vanney, Matt Reese, Dan Calichman, Reese, everybody. Like, they just loved how hard I worked and were excited that I played well enough to warrant this. But so Matt Reese was my teammate at UCLA, and we were still living on campus. So we drove separately for whatever reason that day, and he left early, or he left right when practice ended to go back. And I had to stick around because I had to do some paperwork and all that stuff. But while I went to go do that, the coaches called me into their office, Octavio, and he said, "You know what? Leave your bag here because we don't know if we can take you or not." And I was like, "Oh shit," So I went back to campus, and everybody's giving me high fives. He said he'd call me later that night. So everybody's giving me high fives, purposely coming over to my apartment to say congratulations because Matt had told everybody that I was going. Because everybody felt pretty bad that we'd won the national championship and I was the one senior that didn't get drafted, right? So everybody comes over, does their thing, and he said he'd call me at 6 that night. And 6 comes and goes, nothing. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like sweating bricks over here. And I just I'm going to call him. So I call him at 7. And he goes, "Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we can't take you. We'll see you in a couple weeks," and hangs up. Yeah. So now, so listen. It still would have hurt if it was just me that knew. But the fact that everybody else thought I was going, times that by 100, dude. It hurts so bad. And so I was so gutted. And now I have to when anybody asks, I have to say what happens, and there's really nothing to say. It's just like, yeah, they changed their mind. And now because everybody, so you see it like, why aren't you in Florida with the, this is bullshit. So I had about 2 or 3 weeks of just feeling like a complete asshole. And then they came back and I didn't know what else to do. I thought I was good enough and had proven myself to hang with those guys. And I didn't want to just immediately go down to the lower levels. So I went back out and started training with them again and started training well. And they didn't want to sign me, though. They were kind of dangling me around. And so at that point, the assistant coach, Ralph Perez, I think he called a couple of the Orange County Zodiac and San Diego Flash. I said, hey, we got this kid who's just needs a little bit more seasoning, I'm sure, right? Just needs more experience. And so they ultimately set me up, and I went down to Orange County. Mike Gartland, who was my agent for a little while, was the coach at the time. Super funny. And he became my agent much, much later, but we're still very close friends. And I wanted to continue to train with the Galaxy like 1 or 2 days a week and then go down to Orange County. And he was like, no, if you're on the team, you got to stay with us, you know? And San Diego's were needing players. So they're like, yeah, we'll let you do that. And I only did it for like 2 or 3 weeks and it just became too much driving back and forth. But so anyway, went down to San Diego and it was great. It was I would say my most favorite year because I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. And I had to decide then. I had to make choices in my life. Like, okay, I'm here. Didn't go the way that I wanted. And I'm making $800 a month. I'm sleeping on floors. I'm eating top ramen, you know, and I'm training with the team in the morning and I'm making sure I train by myself in the afternoon. And I'm doing all these things. I'm running on the beach. I'm training with a tennis ball. I'm running up hills. I'm doing all these things. And we're going to see where this goes. And we had an insane year. We ended up making it to the A-League semifinals. We didn't even have a coach for the last 2/3 of the season because Ralph Wilhelms left to go coach in Hungary. And we parlayed that success into a couple of us getting called up to San Jose, which was me and Joe Cannon. And we did so well. Again, my first impression, right? Always trying to be good on my first impression. We did so well in our 7 to 10 days with them. They wanted to sign us the following MLS season. So it all worked out.
And with that call up, like to the the
Clash. Yeah,
Clash, the Earthquakes, whatever. Brian Quinn was the head coach at the time, correct?
That's right. He was the coach. And what was cool was, and I don't think this really exists anymore, or I don't know if he was it on purpose back then, but they had a friendly against Toluca or Necaxa, and that gave them an opportunity to try some new players and bring a couple in, and that's why we got called in. So we didn't have to come into like a proper, you know, preseason or a tryout, right? We got Joe and I and maybe 2 other players got called in that were local coming off an A-League season. Like, let's see what these guys are about. And we ended up playing, I think we both got to play the last 15, 20 minutes at Spartan Stadium with the most raucous crowd. I mean, those fans were crazy, dude. And I loved every minute of it. Like, it's what I always wanted. And it gives you enough hype internally to be like, I can't wait to feel that again because it was so exciting and fun. And so when they wanted to sign me, and they dangled me a little bit too, because that was just kind of early MLS. But ultimately I signed on the day before my birthday in 1999. So I was 22 at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And with that, you played for the Clash, later rebranded as the Earthquakes, from 99 to 03. Also in between that, you went on loan to
Lech Poznan.
Poznan in Poland.
Yeah.
And you made 8 appearances for them. Can you tell me about like how was that like first learning you're gonna get loaned out and then realizing, hey, I'm not getting loaned out to a team nearby, I'm going overseas?
Yeah, so loans were very rare in MLS at that point, and still are pretty rare, I'd say. And we just happened to have a teammate named Wojtek Krakowiak who played at Clemson, and he was the Heisman Trophy winner that previous college season. He's a little guy, little hairy guy, and I love him. I think MLS was probably just too physical in some ways at that point, right? Maybe now I bet you he would stand out because the game's slowed down and there are definitely enough teams out there that are trying to play where I think he would have fit in. But at that time, it still felt a little rough and tumble, and maybe it was he just didn't stick very long in MLS. But at that time, at the end of 2000, he set up his loan to Lech Poznan. He knew the coach at the team, and Poznan's like, we're struggling so bad. If you got any other players, we'd be open to it. So it was me and Ian Russell. Now, when I found out, Lothar Osiander was a coach at the Clash or Earthquakes at the time. And he goes, you should really consider this. And I was like, Poland? I mean, even though, you know, the Premier League wasn't as known as it is now, still obviously very popular. And you know about the Milan teams and Juventus, you knew Italy, you knew Barcelona, Real Madrid. You know, I was like, Poland? Like, I don't even know anything about Poland. But I sat right behind Dan Kalichman, who had been around for a long time, and he had played in Japan previous to MLS. And he really convinced me that it didn't really matter where you got a chance to play. You were going to get more games, and you were going to get out of your comfort zone and get out of this culture, and you were going to have to learn how to fight and survive somewhere else. And he really painted a more of a challenge for me, and he knew that I really responded to challenges. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I'm so glad that I did, because you go over there and that's a very difficult language to pick up. So it's not like I was going to be spitting sentences, you know, and it was going to be like a 3 or 4 month loan. And I played more than 8 games, because we had a couple of friendlies against Bundesliga teams. We played in a couple of cup competitions and other friendlies. So I probably had like 14 to 15 games overall.
Okay.
But they did not think Americans could play, which still kind of exists, even though it's starting to go away a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now they just don't think we can coach, right?
Yeah, now we're just awful coaches.
Yes, we have enough players that have proven themselves. Now it's just like, our coaches aren't great. That's what they think. So yeah. I went over there, and you weren't only trying to win over the fans, right? Of course, you want to do that anytime somewhere new, and the coaching staff, just to kind of prove that they did the right thing by bringing you in. But you had to beat out a teammate to get on the field. And that's probably a lot of the other guys' friend. So now you're working into the dynamics of a locker room where you can't speak the language. They don't think you can play. And how do you win? How do you do that? Right? You have to go over there and you have to prove it every day. You have to have a good attitude. You can't be an asshole. And then after you do that and you start to earn minutes, then it's then you walk into it every single game. Every time you go in there, oh, there's the American. They try to throw shit at you. They try to spit on you. They try to do all this stuff. And it's intimidating at times, and it makes you tougher. I guess in some ways, I'm glad I didn't know the language. That way I didn't know what they were saying to me. But I remember a game away from home where this guy was just trying to taunt me the whole time and trying to bait me. And we were on a corner kick. I'll never forget this. Our corner kick. So I went up to try to bang one home, as I do. And he punched me before the just came and I wasn't even looking, came and cold cocked me right in the face when the referee was looking at the corner kick. And I, as anybody would, started to chase him. Right.
Yeah.
So he runs over by the referee and stands behind the referee and start laughing while the referee's looking at me. And I'm trying to plead my case about what happened. And he's just talking his shit.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So I waited 5 minutes. And I waited till the referee was looking the other way. And before a ball gets played into him, I go up and underneath his arm because his back's to me. And I just pop him right in the face, dude. It was pretty satisfying, to be honest with you. And the coach at that point, their coach took him off because it was just getting out of control. And I was the one that was losing control. This guy was not going to win whatever fight he was going to start. And I think the guy could see it. So he subbed that guy off pretty quickly. But yeah, so that happened to me though. Every single game, there'd be more and more, there'd be somebody else. At home, it was a little bit different, but away, always the same. And when people are trying to spit on you and throw stuff at you, it's just, personally, I loved it because I just had never been around that growing up for any sport. I had just never seen anything like that. And for somebody, it kind of harkens back to my grandfather. He cared so much. The fact that the fans cared so much to try to throw me off my game, I couldn't let them win, right? I couldn't let them have the satisfaction of throwing me off my game. So there was maybe only one game where I was a little bit thrown off, and that was only because I saw fans from both sets of teams meet each other like an hour before, and I've never seen a fight like that. And guys were bleeding and shooting bottle rockets at each other and throwing furniture. And I mean, it was insane. And I was just a little bit like, what are we doing here? And that kind of, I just lost a little bit of my focus. And I remember not having that great of a game and the guys kind of calling me out about it. But
of course,
but outside of that, I was pretty good. And I actually played really well in our 2 friendlies. We played Bundesliga teams and closed door friendlies. And I had played so well. The coach was like, would you consider playing in the Bundesliga? These teams are interested in signing you. But I had a terrible agent, and he had no connections in Europe, so it didn't go anywhere. But it was kind of cool to know and get that validation that I could hold myself at a high level against good players, which ultimately, paved the way for me to get to the heights that I did.
Of course. So along with that, you did win the 2001 MLS Cup, beating LA Galaxy. 2-1. 2-1 after extra time. I don't think it went to penalties, correct? 2-1.
That was golden goal that time. So
Oh,
Dwayne De
golden.
Rosario scored a golden goal and it was over, which I think is a great way to finish a final, by the way. But
MLS, we love it.
I mean, I think golden goal in general should come back.
For sure.
It's just such a great way to end a game. You know,
it's the best way to solve a FIFA game as well.
That too.
Come on, it's the best.
It's the best.
So then following that, entering the 2003 season, you were traded to the Kansas City Wizards.
Yeah.
What was your reaction on like when you were traded, when you were told you were being traded, or did you find out through someone else, or were you told like, hey, we're trading you for this?
Good question. So I found out it was like the day of the MLS draft. And I found out in the morning. I can't remember who called me, if it was one of the coaches or if it was like the general manager or whatever. I can't remember, actually. I was in shock. I had good off-season talks with the coaches. I thought I was part of their plans. And so to get traded was a bit unfortunate. But it ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me personally. But in that moment, you don't think that. And I had never lived outside of California. Yeah. So I mean, I had played in Kansas City, but I didn't know Kansas City. So that was a bit of a shock. My wife had just started law school in San Francisco. So that was heartbreaking for her and us as a couple, because we'd just been married, to work through now what are we going to do? So there were a lot of complications that, it's easy to read on paper, but all the layers and behind the scenes action that goes into actually making that happen is interesting. This is only America that happens. Anywhere else as a player, you get to kind of choose where you get to go, what's the best fit for you. But here they kind of tell you where you get to go. But you know what? It ended up being great. It worked out great for me. But yeah, at that time I was in shock. I was really disappointed. But then that you're going to a place where you're wanted. And that felt good and refreshing in some ways too. And somewhat of a new start, because I felt like where I was with Frank Yallop and Dom Kinnear at that point, I think it had made up their mind on how good I was going to be in their system. And maybe in their mind, I had hit a ceiling with their system. So I should probably write them a thank you letter for setting me free and letting me grow somewhere else.
Of course. So on that, you joined the Wizards from 2003 to 2010. Along this amazing journey, you won the US Open Cup. You made an MLS Cup final appearance. You made the best 11 squad 4 times and won Defender of the Year in 2005 or 2006.
That's right. Should have won it in 2004, 2005, and 2006, but
yeah, you were runner up
better.
Runner up in 2004 and 2006. What was your feeling when you realized like I won Defender of the Year? And I believe you're the only person to win Defender of the Year that was undrafted as well.
Yes, that's probably right. I remember seeing, and obviously this will change as the years go by, but for last time I checked, there was only 13 players in the history of the league that had been best 11 4 times. So, and that'll change. Obviously that list is going to grow, but that for someone that was undrafted, that's a pretty big deal. And what happened for me was that when we were playing, even in San Jose, I was playing on the outside of a back 3, or sometimes we'd go to a back 4 and I'd get to play center back. Like center back was my best position. And I didn't get to play it full time. Even in 2003, when I played for the Wizards, we were a back 3 because we had Preki on our team, who ended up being MLS MVP. But he was such a talented playmaker. We didn't want him to waste any energy defending. So we had 2 holding midfielders and played with a back 3. And that suited our team. But he broke his leg in preseason in 2004. And that changed everything for my career. As sad as it is to say that out loud, Preki breaking his leg changed my career, because that forced us into a back 4. We were better suited for a back 4 that particular season. And we crushed it, dude. Listen, 2004, that year isn't talked about a lot in terms of greatest teams. But I had a conversation with somebody from KC that was around during that time. They're writing a book. It's for the 25-year anniversary of Kansas City.
Yep.
And that 2004 team, we were tied on points for the Supporter Shield, but we lost it because the other team scored 2 more goals than we did. Okay. We won the Open Cup and we got to the MLS Cup final. So we lost 3-2. So we were 3 goals away from being the first team to ever win a treble in MLS history. That's insane, but we're never talked about. Never. That team is never talked about. And not only that, I knew that if I wanted to start making all-star teams or to get into the national team, I had to be on the best defense in the league. So going into 2004, especially when Preki broke his leg, a goal of mine was we have to be the best defense in the league. That's the only way I'm going to get a chance. And if we have the best defense in the league, we're going to have success, obviously, as a group. So that was it. That was my whole goal. Just don't give up goals. And in 2004, we had the best defense in the league. And we were so close to being the best team and winning the treble, right? And we uncharacteristically gave up 3 goals in 15 minutes in the MLS Cup final. And that was the famous handball from Aleko Eskandarian that the referee missed. And who knows? But we were very close to being noticed as a great team. And we were a great team. And so they gave it to Robin Fraser in 2004, and he had the second best defense in the league. So, okay, it's fine. And I love Robin, and I always looked up to him. But I was like, God, how else am I going to win this goddamn thing? And so 2005, I didn't play in as many games. I don't even know if we made the playoffs that year, we didn't make the playoffs in 2005. But because I had success with the national team and I was playing well, it's like they gave it to me because I had been so good the year before. It's like you had to prove yourself, especially someone like me, an undrafted guy. We got to make sure you can do it for more than 1 year before we give you any awards.
Like the Ballon d'Or.
Exactly right. So I finally won it in 2005 when I probably deserved it more in 2004. And then in 2006, I probably definitely deserved it because anytime I played, my team was good. And I played in the World Cup that year. But I had broken my jaw, so I just missed, and I missed due to the World Cup, so I missed over half the season. They couldn't give it to me, but I still finished runner-up, and they gave it to Bobby Boswell. So we could argue that over a 3-year stretch, I was one of the best. Yeah, I could be up there, maybe one more. All right, this is me being a little bitter Bob. But I would say that getting that honor was incredible, and it was a validation of all the hard work and sacrifice. And that was really a long way of me saying that, but there was a time there where I was very good, and I was really proud of how I was playing and where I was mentally and emotionally, and what I was asking of myself and trying to raise the game of others. And obviously having a World Cup in there to show that I could hold my own against the best in the world was incredibly satisfying as well.
Fantastic. Continuing to build on that. So during your Defender of the Year 04-05 season, you got called up for your first U.S. men's national team appearance. It was July 7th, 2005. It was a Gold Cup match.
Yep.
You stayed, I believe you won that Gold Cup in 05.
That's right.
And then following your success with the Gold Cup, you were called up and selected by, I believe, head coach Bruce Arena at the time for the 06 World Cup.
That's right.
You went on to make 25 appearances for the U.S. men's national team, and you did score 1 goal. When we roll the clip,
roll it.
Advantage, and they've had a couple set pieces. This will be the second corner of the night. Again, as Bruce alluded to before, I think Conrad Bocanegra is definitely a guy that has to be a major target on this play.
Number 4 for the United States. Lennon sends it in, the header, and it's into the back of the net. The United States strikes, and it's Jimmy Conrad. Jimmy Conrad finds the net. 1-0 USA.
What are your opinions first off on that World Cup run, and take me through rolling the clip, the goal versus Mexico?
Okay, well, with regard to the World Cup, I think we walked into that tournament ranked number 3 overall by FIFA in the FIFA rankings. Now, whatever you think of the FIFA rankings, we as players feel the same way. We were a little overrated. We knew that going in, and frankly, we didn't want to be that high. Just put a target on our back. But given how well we had performed in qualifying and winning the Gold Cup, and obviously 2002 making the quarterfinals, really positioned ourselves to do well. And then, you have essentially the same core of those guys that did well in 02 coming back, for DeMarcus Beasley, Landon Donovan, a little young, a little older, a little more wiser. Clint Dempsey comes into the team, so you have some exciting new players. You got an old warhorse like myself that's getting his first crack at things. So you balance a squad that way, and we drew the group of death. We had Czech Republic first, and then Italy, who ended up winning the tournament, and Ghana. And as I've learned, and as I've seen countless times, especially around the U.S. men's national team, it's the fine margins. Things didn't tip our way in that particular tournament. If you remember back in 2002, we beat Portugal first, We drew with South Korea, and then we lost to Poland. And right after we lose to Poland, we thought we were out. And the reason that we were in is because South Korea scored in the 88th minute or something crazy against Portugal. And that's the only reason the U.S. went through. And then there we had a favorable draw against Mexico. At some point, we were due to beat them, and we beat them, and all the pressure was on them, and we played really, really well that game. And then we played probably our best game of the tournament against Germany, and got unlucky, not that the penalty didn't get called. And Germany ended up making the final, losing to Brazil. So it's really just these fine margins that went our way in 2002, and I think we paid for those margins in 2006 because they did not go our way. And in that first game, I remember, well, one, hearing the national anthem for your country at a World Cup. I mean, I've heard the national anthem I don't know how many times during my career. Even, through college and, high school or baseball, when you're a little kid playing Little League, whatever, you hear it. But it hits different when you hear it at a World Cup. At that moment, it's an incredible feeling. Before that first game in particular, at that moment, everybody at home has your back. Everybody, the casuals, people not paying attention, like they'll still hear about it. And they that they want you to win. Yep. And it's the one time in your life that you get to be on that team and try to make that happen. And it's so awesome. It was such a great feeling. Now, I didn't play that first game, but the national anthem hit different. And within 2 or 3 minutes, Czech Republic scored. And I thought, all right, this is going to be different. And so we made some subs at halftime, and there was only one spot left. And Bruce had me, Clint Dempsey, and Josh Wolf warm up. And at this point, we're down 2-0. It's
a very interesting trio.
It is. Me and Wolfie were teammates, or excuse me, roommates. Teammates with Kansas City, but roommates with the U.S. And I don't know why I was warming up per se. Maybe somebody was, maybe Eddie was a little hurt, or something like that, I think. But the other two guys are obviously offensive options. Then we were trying to get back in the game. They scored their third while we're warming up, and honestly, I thought to myself, it would be amazing to play in a World Cup. It's one thing to say you made the team. It's another thing to actually say that you got to play. But I'm like, God, this is the best national team performance I've ever seen against us. Like I'd sat on the bench for a lot of national team games, and I played in a lot of the games. But that game, Czech Republic was so good. Pavel Nedved, Thomas Rosicky, oh God, they were so good. To see them in person, I was like, these guys are amazing. And they were so tactically ready for us that we couldn't create anything. The only thing, Claudio Reyna got a shot off the post, and that was really our only shot on target, I think, the whole game. But they scored that third goal in the second half while we're warming up. And that was where I was like, I don't know, man. I hope I get in one of the other games. This one sucks. And Wolfie ended up going in. So me and Clint did the long walk of shame back to the bench because we weren't going in. Mm-hmm. But it was an incredible experience to be there, to be a part of it. And going back into the locker room after we lost that first game hurt. But I looked at Clint. I'm like, hey, let's just go get some work done. It's not going to be fun to sit in here. Let's grab the strength conditioning coach, Pierre. Let's just go run around, go play some possession or do something just to get all this energy out, So we went and did that, did some sprints or whatever. And then as all the other guys that were really disappointed, got out, had their showers, and were working through the press stuff, we could go back in the locker room and kind of avoid that. It just was hard to be in the locker room at that time. So a lot of disappointment, right? And the odds are, if you lose your first game in a group, your odds of getting through the group are very slim. And we knew we needed to get points against Italy. So we wouldn't.
I believe it's 27% now. If you lose your first game, you have 27% to advance.
Yeah, which is pretty hard. But even though Argentina did that and ended up winning the World Cup, and Spain did that in 2010. So there are examples, of course. But there was, it was tough. It was tough. And I got to play in the Italy game, which was incredible. I came on as a sub, and that game's one of the most famous games, I'd say, in U.S. soccer history on the men's side. And for us to grind out that result was really special. And then I got to start against Ghana, and we got hosed in that game. So we drew 1-1 against Italy, and we needed to win against Ghana to book our ticket. We would have played Brazil in the round of 16. And we gave up a pretty bad goal. Claudio coughed it up in a bad spot, and maybe he got fouled, didn't get called. They slotted home, make it 1-0. And then we immediately, or within 5-10 minutes, we get the equalizer. DeMarcus strips one of their guys, plays it across to Clint, who buries it, which was an awesome goal. And then we give up the most god-awful penalty kick call of all time. Just go look it up. It is the shadiest.
Oh, I've seen it.
The shadiest non-call of all time, Caleb. And And that was so backbreaking because that was a minute before halftime. And had we gone into that locker room 1-1 at halftime, feeling like we got back into the game and had that momentum, I wouldn't have been surprised if we went on and found that second goal to win the game. But again, the margins just weren't in our favor, and then the tournament's over, and it's like the weirdest thing because all of a sudden there's all this buildup and all this hype, and then it's over, and everybody's back to their clubs and moving on, and it's like, did that actually even happen? That was so crazy. So anyway, it was the peak of my career, obviously, and to be able to have played and held my own against the best of the world under that type of pressure was something I'll always be very proud of.
Of course. Would you say playing in a World Cup or scoring against Mexico, which is the bigger one there?
No, World Cup's bigger. I with all due respect to Mexico and our rivalry, playing in a World Cup and holding my own is now Mexico US is a different gravy, man. It's a whole different set of pressure and expectations. And to be able to know that I've written myself into that history in some ways, and I have some awesome evidence that I didn't even need to jump to score on Osvaldo Sanchez makes it even better. But I think playing at a World Cup is the creme de la creme. It is the cherry on top. It is the peak of anyone's career. And obviously winning a World Cup would be, I couldn't even imagine what that feels like, but to play in one and to represent your country at that level is pretty neat. Now the Mexico thing's awesome though, but it was a friendly, right? Had that been in like a World Cup competition, or had it been in even in a Gold Cup, it probably would have a little bit more weight. But anytime you can dunk on Mexico, it's always fun.
It's always great.
Yeah.
So following the World Cup, again, still with Kansas City in 2007, you're out of contract. You then renewed your contract and you were named the club captain by head coach Kurt Analfo, who is the current New England Revolution technical director. Is that correct?
That's right.
So along that, you then played 3 more years, and then entering the 2010 season, you were out of contract, and you chose to participate in the MLS reentry draft.
I didn't choose that. So 2010, I played through that year. So 2007 through 2010, I played 4 years on that new contract.
Yep.
And finished that contract, saw that contract out. And at the end, this was like the second or the first collective bargaining, or the end of the first collective bargaining agreement, or when the rules change about the reentry draft. This is the first reentry draft.
Okay.
And me and Josh Wolf were both out of contract. And I found out through a reporter that I wasn't going to get brought back to Kansas City. Peter Vermes and the coaching staff didn't have the decency to pick up the phone and call me, even though I had committed 8 years of my life to the club and had been captain and achieved so much. Yeah, it was really disappointing. And, me and Peter have worked through that, and it's fine. I have a ton of respect for him, and I feel like he has respect for me, but that's not the way you treat somebody that had given so much to the club. Yeah, for me, that's not how you treat anybody, no matter how much time they've been. Like, if you're not going to work with them, at least have the decency to call them and tell them what's up. So for me to have to hear it that way, that's why I quote unquote elected to go into the reentry draft, because Kansas City made the decision to not bring me back after they had used me the week before in their jersey unveil for the rebranding, which kind of makes it feel worse that they probably knew they weren't going to keep me, but they were going to still use me for appearances and that type of stuff to try to sell something,
Yeah. I mean, I have seen that.
Like, I want to take a shower just talking about it. It's like, it's gross that you'd even treat anybody like that.
I've seen it firsthand, as I am friends with a good amount of players that are in the league currently. A similarity between what you just explained and now was, it brought me to Diego Fagundes, because he gave 10 years to the Revolution, and then following his end of season, they were like, he was looking for a contract, and I don't think Bruce and Brad Friedel were, at the time, both of them were budging. So nothing came to happen, and then he left. So it's similar that, like,
I hope they at least reached out to him, and at least initiated a conversation to say, hey, listen, thank you. I mean, all you're really looking for is just a thank you. Like, hey, I mean, I was 34 at that point, right? 33. Yeah. Like, I know that you're not building your future around me, right? So but let's have a big boy conversation about that, and at least give me the respect of saying, hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you've done, but we're just not going to go with you. And what am I going to say to that? There's nothing I can say. You kill me with kindness, right?
Of course.
But when you don't interact with me now, Peter did call me after I had already found out, when he knew that I had already found out, because my agent had stepped in and like, what's the deal?
Mhm.
But at that point,
It was
if you
already
can't,
too far
yeah,
gone.
it's too late. Yeah, it's too late at that point.
So following that, you were selected in stage 2 of the MLS reentry draft by Chivas.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, you played only 2 games for them,
I did.
and you scored in one of them
against Kansas City.
Against Kansas City, which is even funnier.
Yeah. It's yeah, I ultimately was excited about Chivas because Chivas USA was based in LA and I grew up in LA. So to be able to finish my career in front of my family and friends was going to be really thrilling for me, and to give that club a couple years of my last couple years to help nurture the next generation of players that they could bring along. And I was captain, right from the get-go, and Robin Fraser was in charge and Greg Vanny was the assistant. So kind of full circle moment for me because they were the guys with the Galaxy when I was playing, trying to make the team back when I was 21 years old. So it was cool. It was a great experience. I just got a concussion. I had a bad concussion in 2009 playing for the national team, and I just started to get concussions a little bit easier as time went along. And I got punched in the back of the head by Matt Pickens.
Yep.
For the Colorado Rapids. And I blacked out for about 10 seconds. And I told my wife at that point that if I had ever had another bad one, I'd just stop. We were about to have our second child and it just wasn't worth it. Like I wasn't going to play for the national team anymore. It's just, I had gotten to that age where it's just really hard to have the same type of impact, even though let's shout out to Tim Ream, who's proven that to be quite the opposite. But my injury was, and I had a headache for a couple months and I didn't play. And so it just made sense for me to hang him up at that point. That's the only reason I had 2 games with Chivas. So
yeah,
it was disappointing. I had high hopes for that whole part of the adventure and to end my career kind of on my terms, but the soccer gods thought otherwise.
To my knowledge, was that your 6th concussion professionally? Do you know?
6 or 7. Yeah, 6 sounds about right. I probably, and I'm sure everybody has stories where they probably were concussed, but they either don't want to acknowledge it as a proper concussion or whatever. So I probably had 6 more that maybe weren't as severe, but as you learn when you get into concussion protocol, every concussion is a concussion, right? There's no like real severity. They're all detrimental to your health in some capacity. So yeah, I probably had 6 that were, when I broke my jaw, they didn't necessarily list that as a concussion, but we could probably argue that was in there. And yeah. So yeah, 6 documented, probably 6 more undocumented.
So I have something similar along that. So I'm playing college right now. I write as well.
Nice.
I'm writing for the New England Revolution, where I'm a beat writer for pro soccer covering the Revolution.
Cool.
Got to do the terminology correct.
I gotcha.
But I've had 9 concussions confirmed.
Oh wow.
Documented. Wow. But to continue playing in school, I only told the school I had 3. You think about the statement like you just had, like you've had 6 documented and probably 6 more undocumented. Like you feel the effects. Like I know I've been knocked out twice. I know I've had 2 serious, like terrible concussions. I know for a fact. And it's like thinking on how you just said that, like of me having 9, I've probably had 18.
Yeah, right.
Like I probably doubled that and not like known it and been like, oh, it's nothing. It's just a headache.
Yeah. Right.
So that's interesting to like hear like the perspectives. And obviously
I would never head the ball again if I were you, by the way.
I don't. I really don't, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't.
And
either.
Along with that, like I've had conversations with Taylor Twellman about it because obviously his career ended basically from concussions, and yours again.
There's a whole bunch of guys. Yeah.
I believe Taylor's ended because of a clash with the Colorado keeper as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure you both ended it.
Thanks, Matt Pickens.
On a clash with Pickens.
I wonder what I'm going to find Matt Pickens now and find out.
I have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure you and Taylor both, your last concussions were in clashes with Pickens. So that's
interesting.
Kind of interesting. So I was going to ask as well, like, because obviously you said you had conversations with like your wife regarding concussions. Do you think Taylor's decision of retirement had any impact on yours, on like him? Because he retired a year prior.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that you take all of these other cases into consideration. I was friends with Brian Namath and Aleko Eskandarian and Ross Pauly had a really bad post concussion stuff. And Taylor, and you talk to each other. You know, you try to understand what they're going through and the decision they came to. I don't remember ever actually having a phone call with Taylor or any of those other guys I mentioned to do that. But I remember sitting down with the coaching staff, and which included Dan Calichman, by the way. So all these guys that I looked up to when I was a kid. And they were like, have you heard of CTE? Do you know what CTE is? And I said, no, I don't. You know, and so you start to read about CTE.
Yep.
And that'll just scare the living crap out of you. And
it's me
and you're like, okay,
right now.
yeah, like it's you start to then, okay, let me look at this practically. What am I trying to prove here? I played 12 years. What is it that I want out of this? You know, and when you start to, it's more ego and pride than it is about being practical about it, right? But there's also that underlying of my whole identity is wrapped up in being an athlete. What do I do now? And that's scary too, right? So you kind of you figure out exactly why you're feeling a certain way, and then you weigh it against, what do I want my future to look like? And do I want to make sure I'm completing sentences when I'm 50 and all that type of stuff? Because you don't know really the accumulation. You might be fine now, but it could be tough later, and you'll be walking through this too, unfortunately. And I'm sorry to hear all that.
100%.
But they were like, it's just not worth it. And we're going to protect you in some ways. And so, you know, they in some ways made the decision for me, even though I was pretty much there.
You were content.
I don't know if I was content, but I had accepted that was probably the right decision. And that was really hard when it was done, when it was final behind the scenes, because we announced it maybe like 2 weeks later. But that first day I went back up to the car to call my wife that it's over. And I couldn't get it out, man. I was crying in the parking lot, and she thought somebody like my mom or dad or my siblings, somebody had died, you know. But somebody had died. Like my whole identity was gone. It was done. And that sounds pretty dramatic, but it took me about 9, maybe a little short of a year to really come to terms that that part of me, that chapter of my life's over. And I think that's a really important thing that I wish everybody could go through. I think you do, right? You graduate high school. I remember thinking that there was some elements of that where you graduate high school and you get this one person, you have your identity, who you are in high school. And then you get out of high school and nobody gives a shit who you were in high school. And you're like, oh, I kind of have to like restart that whole thing again and kind of build up who I am again and find out who I want to be now moving forward. At a whole new place with a whole bunch of older people that are super smart and talented, and it's daunting. And I remember kind of feeling times 100 that same type of thing, because I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I knew I had some media opportunities, and I knew I had these other things, but I didn't know it was going to necessarily parlay into what I've been doing now, which is really living a second dream of being able to do a lot of fun things with a lot of fun people.
Of course. And on that, because this is kind of just like my last hurrah question, pretty much. So following 2011, I believe you were an assistant coach for Chivas for a season. Is that correct?
So essentially when I retired, I just felt like a chump not showing up and taking money. That's not my bag. So I was helping out with the youth academy. I was helping out with whatever I could with the reserve. They had reserve league at that time. So I was coaching the reserve team. And Greg and Robin were very, very gracious to allow me to have that opportunity. I'd run trainings, you know, so I got my B license. I'm working on my A right now, and I should have done it a long time ago. But I do have an itch to coach, and it was a good opportunity to be around that environment. And I thought I was pretty well received, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I can't thank Greg and Robin enough for that. Of course.
So following that, kind of around like 2012, 2013, that's kind of like when the first notation of like Twitter and Instagram, that's when your accounts were really started. You started Twitch in 2017. What kind of got you into this like media creator content role? Did you work with Copa 90? Did you?
Yeah. So the origin story there is that when I first retired in 2011, so even though I was coaching, I had my weekends free, right? Because I'd go to games, but I'm not on, so I can go do other things. So if the team traveled, I'd always hop in with Eric Winalda and Christopher Sullivan on their Fox Sports Game of the Week. So because I was in LA, it was like a 30-minute drive up the freeway, and I'd go hop in and put on a suit and talk about the game of the week. And that was a really good experience for me to be kind of in this new environment, and again, trying to make a good first impression and working hard and all that.
Yep.
And I think I became more of a threat to Eric and Christopher. So I wasn't, they will never acknowledge it now, but it was competitive in a way that I didn't expect it to be. I thought it'd be more like, oh, we're all in this together. Let's have a good show kind of thing. And it was more like, I don't want you to take any airtime away from me. So I had to learn. I cut my teeth pretty quick on that. But during that, the guy that was running Fox Sports, or the soccer part of it at the time, I can't think of his name, but we went out to lunch and he's like, I like you. I like your personality, but you don't have the playing pedigree. Like, you didn't play in Europe. And I said, well, I played in the World Cup. I think that should give me enough credibility. He's like, not enough, and I said, okay. So yeah, I was a little bit left at lunch going, okay, well, I don't know. So they gave me some odd jobs. I'd be calling like CONCACAF, CONCACAF Champions League games, right? Or FIFA. Yeah, I did some FIFA Club World Cup games, like 2:30 in the morning. I'd go up the freeway and call these games off monitor, and it was fun. I mean, it was different, but I knew that I wasn't getting a lot of reps, and I didn't know if color commentary was really for me. I like to. It doesn't. Not the best platform to showcase my personality. So, at the end of 2011, YouTube started a new initiative that they put $100 million into 100 channels, and that they gave money to Madonna, Jay-Z, like big names, and they had 2 soccer-only channels. One was Copa 90, which was going to be based in London, and the other one was Kick TV, which was based in New York City. And so MLS was the guy that got the rights for Kick TV, named Brian Beadall. He's good friends with Don Garber, and he said, hey, you want to work together on this? And Garber's like, yeah, sure. So they figured out a way to work together, and the people at MLS is like, oh, we know the perfect guy that would be great. We know, for like kind of being a little bit more personable on camera. And so when they called me and said if I was interested, I talked to my wife. I said, okay, we're here in LA. This is where my whole family's from. We both went to UCLA. We've got friends everywhere. We're kind of where we want to be honest. But how about, what if we live in New York for a year and see how this goes? So we're like, screw it. So we just like, this life's an adventure. Let's go see what's what. And it turned into a 5-year adventure. Kick TV got to 1 million subscribers after 3.5 years. We were really on the forefront. Honestly, Caleb, if Kick TV was still around now and they'd stayed with it, we would be at 15 to 20 million subscribers. No problem. We had live shows. We were doing travel shows before Copa 90, and Ellie were doing all those. We were ahead of it. And Copa 90 ended up buying us, even though they were the smaller fish to us, which is crazy when they were in London and we were in New York, that they had a smaller audience. But we were just doing more things, more cutting edge things, more things that were fun and worth watching. We built up I still have people come up to me and talk to me about Kick TV, which is insane. And so from that point, I got into new media, and you start to learn how Twitter ties into your YouTube videos, and then Instagram starts, and you start to tie into how you start to build all this together. And then, okay, well, there's new emerging platforms. I got to be on that. So you get onto TikTok, and you start to learn the language of that particular platform, and how to be successful there. And then you got to figure out which ones you want to work on. Twitch is another one, right? So I had a good relationship with the people there, and had a good 2 years where I was on pretty frequently and building. I mean, I had audiences. I happened to be live when Messi left Barcelona, and they put me on the front page for 2 hours talking Messi, and I had like 30,000 people watching, and it was insane. Yeah, right. Yeah, Caleb, you were there. Yeah, that's right. So it was. You've been around it. You've been on the Twitch stuff, and it was fun. The Twitch stuff was really fun, and it helped me get better at my craft. Ultimately, coming on every day, having opinions, thinking on your feet, engaging the audience. And so I turned that Twitch thing into probably getting that job with Fox Sports to go to the World Cup this past winter, because I was so good at managing so many different things and keeping the conversation going. I was built for it. So yeah, you kind of you keep learning and keep growing, and you see where it takes you. And it's been a crazy ass adventure, dude. That's what I'll say.
I feel that. And then kind of just growing.
I do remember seeing your name on the chat now that you say it. Like now that I knew that you'd come to pickup games, but
I've done a pickup game. I've done 2 pickup games. I've been in the Twitch, and then I've been on your channel talking Revs once.
That's right. You came on. That's right.
I think we were talking Revs.
I remember. Yeah.
I remember I had to get.
Thank you for doing that. That was awesome.
Of course. I think I had to get in contact with your manager. Monty, yeah, Monty
or Mike K, or
I think it was Monty. Monty emailed me, and I was like, all right, what am I doing? I had a notebook. I was like, all right, I'm on Jimmy's thing. What do I have to say here?
Yeah, Monty's great. Yeah.
So along with that, so since your content creator work, you've also returned to coaching, Because in 2018 you became a technical director and head associate of the Glens.
Yes.
And then ahead of the 2020 season, they named you their head coach for 2 seasons. And then in 2022, you returned to your technical director and head associate role, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and then along with that, since 2021, you've been the correspondent for UCL and Europa League for CBS Sports, correct?
Yes.
And then your previous work has just been Fox Sports, or did you do anything with ESPN as well?
No, never worked with ESPN. I mean, I used to write a column when I was a player for ESPN for a little bit, Sports Illustrated, but no, they basically told me that Taylor Twellman is kind of what I would be. Yeah, he's like, we already have somebody like you, and that's Taylor. And Fox was the same for a long time. Like, we already have Stu. So, but it's fine. I have cut my teeth in the digital side, and it's a fun and great place to be, and I really enjoy it, and really respect all the other people that are grinding and hustling in this space. And so, yeah, so in terms of that, CBS Sports since 2021 and Fox Sports now, and I'm working on hopefully doing more with them in the future, whether it's Women's World Cup or Copa America or Euros or the 2026 World Cup. So I'm excited about that as a possibility. And, hopefully Apple TV will give me a call at some point in the future. And it's been fun, man. I really enjoy it. But I do a lot of brand ambassador work. So I've been a brand ambassador for AT&T and Target. And, I get stuff where I work with Heineken and Coca-Cola, and just did something with L'Oreal Paris, which is crazy. And
that's crazy.
Did something. I'm going to work on a campaign with Viore, which is a clothing brand that I really enjoy. And I'm working on this new app that's going to help kids, hopefully. So I can launch that here, hopefully in the next, 6 months. So it's talking to venture capitalists and kind of using that side of my brain and trying to sell what I think could be a really valuable tool. And it's really cool, man. So yeah, just branching off and trying to continue to grow as a human and try to give back in a great way when I can.
Of course. Do you want me to add that with the app that you're coming out with, or do you want me to leave that because that's not been announced yet?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my co-founder's really eager for us to get it out there because maybe it'll draw more interest.
Okay.
It's called Work On app.
Work On app.
It's Work On, WORKON.
Yep.
And essentially it's the elevator pitch is Cameo meets Masterclass. If you're familiar with those.
Yep.
But we're just trying to create a platform where the kids can learn from players that have either played or currently play and how to elevate their game. So
perfect. I'll make sure to note that in there. All right. Yeah. And that's pretty much all I have so far.
Sweet. Well, hopefully I gave you enough there.
Oh, you gave me more than enough. I want to thank you again for obviously lending your time. Obviously, also coming from the dentist, because that's
all good. My swelling went away now, or the numbness went away.
It's better than nothing. Is there any specific social media you want me to plug in the article? Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok?
I'd probably say Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is probably fine.
Okay.
I just have to slow down on YouTube. It's just a lot to try to do everything. And I'm working on my A license too. So it's just too many hats, man.
I'm working on getting my D license right now.
Right. That's good.
No. C license? C or D.
Either way, it's just going to help you, especially if as a journalist, like if you go and let's say you want to interview Bruce Arena and he knows that you've done the legwork to get your coaching licenses and to understand the game better, you're just going to get a different type of respect from those people.
Yeah, I have my referee license and my coaching license, so
great.
Starting to grow all my horizons.
It's going to not only help you be a better writer and potentially a coach yourself or a referee yourself, but it'll also give you a little bit more credibility with the people you're interviewing. So you should let whoever you're working with know, hey, I just got my B license. Just throw it out there casually, or I got my A license. Like they'll know that you're serious about the game, and then that's kind of what they're looking for. Of
course.
Yeah.
Well, once again, I want to say thank you again.
No problem, dude.
Hopefully it will branch out to a lot of audiences and they'll like it. So that's kind of the main goal.
I hope that too. I appreciate you, man.
Of course. Thank you for the time again. Thank you.
No problem, man. Have a good weekend.
Of course. Same with you.
Yeah. Later.
Later.